I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast. More specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. I am Amit. That is K-Dot. The Washington Commanders have officially filled all positions on the coaching staff. They've even made a couple additional moves in the front office. We will get into all of that for you guys. Then, of course, we've got K-Dot thinking about something right now. I'm not quite sure what over there. K-Dot, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm sorry, when you said fill all the positions, it's a movie. It's a line from some movie.
Okay.
I can't remember. I can't recall.
Perfect.
But it's
All right. So we're going to talk about that stuff, of course. Of course, Joe Whitt Jr., Kliff Kingsbury introduced as our coordinators. Go ahead.
Ruby Red, Chris Tucker, Fifth Element. When he's talking, I want all the positions. I want to be in the position. I'm sorry. I didn't even look it up. I think that's right.
To an absolutely rocking start on this episode. Then we're going to talk about the Super Bowl
as
well. So we got the intro press conferences for our coordinators. There's no podcast like this one, at least to the Commanders fan base. So quick recap. Coaching staff, completely done now. We will walk through all of them real quick. Then Joe Whitt Jr., Kliff Kingsbury introduced as defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, respectively. We will talk about their press conferences, recap the Super Bowl, comment mailbag as we always do after the pod. K-Dot, are you ready?
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, before we do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment as you always do. And K-Dot,
share this shit. Just share it.
At the very least, share today's intro. So without further ado, let's go ahead.
I have a gray mustache hair.
We need to burn through this episode. K-Dot's losing his mind. So we made a number of moves in the past few days. Since the last time we spoke to you guys, we had hired Brian Johnson and Jason Simmons. We were talking about both of them in that episode. And all of a sudden, we have like 20 new people. And some fans were like, there's a coach for this position? I had no idea. It's nice to actually have adults in the room. We have said that over and over and over again, and you could see the pull that is taking place in the NFL with Adam Peters as our general manager, with Dan Quinn and his ability to fill a staff. We've talked about that on this program before. Yep. And so let's get into some of them. The biggest name was Anthony Lynn this past week. So he was with the 49ers as an assistant head coach. Now he's our running backs coach and run game coordinator. Also from San Francisco, we got Daryl Tapp. He's going to become our defensive line coach. We got Tom Donatel from the LA Chargers, defensive backs coach. Larry Izzo from Seattle. He's our special teams coordinator now. We got Ken Norton Jr. coming from UCLA, but used to be the linebackers coach in Seattle under Dan Quinn. 2010 to 2014, also been a defensive coordinator in the league. He's going to be our linebackers coach. We got David Blau going from Detroit. He had been, a practice squad quarterback for some time, even on a couple active rosters. Recently retired, 28 years old. He's going to be our assistant quarterbacks coach. He's worked with Kliff in the past, so that's another hire. And then I wanted to highlight, K-Dot, the NFC East, because there has been a bit of an emphasis on getting coaches in from each of those teams. So, of course, Dallas, we got Dan Quinn as our head coach. Joe Whitt Jr. as the defensive coordinator. Recently picked up Sharif Floyd to be assistant defensive line coach. That's another Dallas hire. Then we, of course, mentioned Brian Johnson of the Philadelphia Eagles, now our assistant head coach officially. He has been named the assistant head coach and our pass game coordinator. And then Bobby Johnson from the New York Giants, offensive line coach. So a lot of stuff there just on the coaching staff. We'll talk about front office in just a little bit. But K-Dot, any of those names to you, any of those names in particular call out to you and go, wow, that is a hire?
Yeah, I mean, there's one name, of course. I do love all of the former players, especially that are right here in the room. That's always a nice thing, especially young, youthful, very racially diverse group. But if there's one name that makes me like, oh, that jumps out, and I think everybody knows, is Anthony Lynn, right? Like, you get a guy who has so much history with the Shanahan run scheme, which is, I mean, look, the thing with the Shanahan offense, we were all excited about in the sense of like, what coordinators could we pull for here, there? We wanted Clint Kubiak or somebody from anywhere. Now we have a guy who's one of the most fundamentals, or one of the guys that has the most fundamentals when it comes to probably the single most important aspect of that offense is what they do with the offensive line and zone run, or just the running game. Totally. I mean, Anthony Lynn goes all the way back to the days of Mike in Denver, right? He was a coach there. You see what he's done over the years. I mean, when he was in Buffalo, they were the number ranked rushing offense for those 2 years that he was there. When he became head coach in San Diego, which you'll see for a lot of these guys, we have more dudes that have been former head coaches than I can ever remember being here in Washington since the Joe Gibbs era. But like, the idea is that you see a lot of guys that maybe even when they got the head coaching job, they might not have been able to focus on the one thing that they wanted to do primarily. So it might have faltered a bit. But when they get the opportunity to focus on the thing that they're the best at, you get production. And I think that there's like a best of both worlds sort of thing happening, which is like everybody that might have been a little on the fence about Kliff Kingsbury because you wanted the Shanahan offense. Why not take both of them? Why not get everything you can from everybody in the league just to learn? And we'll talk about the Kliff Kingsbury press conference and everything a little later, but all the language and everything you're hearing, it sounds as though what's the big thing for them is those C's that I talk about, right? Which is that communication, that collaboration, which I think everyone has said that at some point. But let the best idea win. Like, come correct with the best idea. And I think Anthony Lynn, in what you've been able to see him do, especially in San Francisco the last couple of years. I mean, we just watched the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that too. If there's any takeaway from the Super Bowl, it's maybe they should have ran it more, because it was working, right? So, like, the idea is we've got somebody who's damn good at it. You add that to a Kliff Kingsbury air raid or whatever it's going to be, passing attack, that could be something really special. It could be. I still have my reservations as far as maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, but as long as they keep championing that collaboration, communication, and making sure that that's the third line, well, could be some good things.
We'll also, of course, get into Kliff Kingsbury's answers to some of the questions in his introductory press conference that occurred, as well as Joe Whitt's, because I think they actually alleviate some of the concerns, at least for me, when it comes to too many cooks in the kitchen. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on those, Kate, and we will get that in a moment. Anthony Lynn, I would need to double check this, but I believe he also worked with Greg Roman in the past as well. And so, for those that don't know Greg Roman, which I imagine most of you do, we have some smart listeners here, that guy also runs a very sound offense that is very focused on run and has been successful in that regard. So it's nice to know, because like K-Dot had mentioned with Kliff Kingsbury, air raid. Okay, we're throwing a lot. Oh, we're in shotgun a lot. And then you get Anthony Lynn, you go, okay, now there's some balance here and there's experience here. And so I was, of course, very excited by the hire. A lot of our fans were very excited by that hire. Any other names on the list that I'd mentioned, K-Dot, that you would like to highlight? It could even be someone we've already spoken about one more time before we go over to Joe Whitt Jr. and Kliff Kingsbury.
I don't be unfair to any of them. So let me say something as a whole as far as these guys, because I did allude to like the aspect of those former players, right? But I think even beyond the former players, if you look at the coaching staff as a whole, right, it's so varied. It's insane to me. So like, one of the knocks that I had about Mike McDonald coming here was what kind of staff could he put together? And if you go and take a look at Seattle, he's basically just pilfered from the NCAA, guys with no NFL experience outside of Leslie Frazier, who's there to be the assistant head coach. These guys are unproven, and that's what they're just going to give it a shot and see what happens. Maybe it works. I'm rooting for them. But the idea here is that you have people that have had success. I think I saw something like the Washington coaching staff has like a total like 17 Super Bowls or something at this fucking point. Yeah. Like, it's nuts. You saw what dudes have done it at every level. Larry Izzo is a dude that I remember playing. I loved watching him play. Dude won Super Bowl. He was back there with Bill. He's played under Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick. There's tons of dudes with tons of experience and learned under some of the great regimes of the last 25, 30 years that are just even names of the throwaways, like John Pagano, Chuck's brother. Like,
didn't even mention John. Right. Thank you.
The dude's been around forever. Like, he's awesome. And when you hear anybody say it, it's like, yeah, no, that's a dude that he fucking matters. He's a linebacker developer to his core. Like, they have dudes that are going to do their damnedest to get the absolute best out of the players, and they know because they've seen it work. They know what works. They know what doesn't work, and as long as they can keep that communication, collaboration going, that to me, like this, yeah, on paper, which I know championships aren't one on paper, but on paper, what I've been talking about being so excited about, that me and the staff building has been, you cannot look at this and not tell me it's a fucking A+.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it actually segues very well into the comments made by Joe Whitt Jr., by Kliff Kingsbury. I just want to quickly highlight that this is the first time I felt that we've been competitive for people in a coaching staff that have been sought after by more than just us, right? Yep. It's been quite a while since we've been able to do that without feeling the need to throw 10x more money at them so that they would come here and then have to sell their people that this is a good place to come because of previous ownership. So it's nice to be able to look at a coach and go, we genuinely have a shot at him, and then actually get the person, which is really, really cool. It feels like we're an actual NFL team now. So just wanted to highlight that for a moment, that it feels good to be able to attract a good coach. It's the best coaching staff we've had since, that graphic where you see all the NFL head coaches now.
It's Tiger Woods syndrome. Tiger Woods was an ugly duckling, played golf. Nobody really gave a shit. And he didn't know where he stood in place in the world. And then finally, when he walks into a Perkins and the waitress says, hey, then he realizes it's a smorgasbord and I can do whatever. You feel attractive now. We've never been that. It's
so well said.
Jim Zorn, nobody else wants the job here. Take it. It's hey, Ron, go over to Joe Gibbs's house for a full day and have him entice you.
And you can bring your boys too. It's fine. We don't care. Just
whatever you want, because we're desperate. Like we're an attractive candidate. We're in an attractive place again. This feels good. Because I don't think it's ever been that way.
It's not Carolina North. We can start there. And again, these aren't all guys. This isn't Dallas North either. So it's not just a Dallas Cowboys staff.
Right.
We got some of them. And by the way, when we talk about Joe Whitt Jr. here in a moment, the guy is awesome, but we will.
But and the other thing that I look at when it comes to the variation of that is that one of our concerns also when it comes to hiring a defensive coach is who's next to step up. I'm sorry, you look through this fucking roster, unless everyone's getting a job, the motherfuckers with experience and dudes that look like they're special and they might need to get that bump here or bump there. Like, it looks like we have a coaching staff that's going to be here for the long haul. And that's great.
Very much looking forward to it. So why don't we go ahead and talk about it? So the coordinators for our team, the offensive coordinator, Kliff Kingsbury, the defensive coordinator, Joe Whitt Jr., they had their press conferences yesterday and they looked, it was fun to hear the contrast between the two, honestly, in terms of energy.
Yeah.
But they did have a couple unifying messages. So we had the standard is the standard, which we heard, and we heard a lot about collaboration in terms of bringing these coaches in. So you talk about that, and you talk about the importance of communication and the importance of collaboration. It's very refreshing. That's one, and I've said that over and over again. Two, Kate, I did really enjoy the contrasting styles of energy. And I think this time it felt more correct. Like, offense is going to be a bit more art. It's going to be a bit more creative to create those spaces to be able to get people open. Kliff seemed like he was just doing his job being at that press conference where he's like, okay, I'll answer the questions, but also I'm not giving much away. Let me just get to evaluating the roster. I don't really care to be here. Then you got Joe Whitt. And you got fans going, I'm ready to run through a wall. But he also has the track record to back it up. And K-Dot, if I could just begin with this and let you take it from here.
Yeah.
I am convinced Joe Whitt Jr. and Dan Quinn are the same person. Because every single answer Dan gave was given by Joe. And he even elaborated on a couple different points Dan made and was able to clear those things up for me. So they are both excellent communicators, Joe and Dan. And so I just wanted to point that out. The floor is yours.
They're in sync. So I'll start with Joe. I'm going to bounce back and forth, but like starting with Joe, they're in sync. So like one of those things that we talk about as far as what lessons have you learned?
I was getting emotional. Please continue.
One of the lessons he learned from Atlanta is you don't need to hire some stranger to be, look, everyone's talked about, if you listen to the interviews, I know one of our comments had talked about the interview that, was it KJ Henry, I believe, did with, John Keim or Craig Hoffman. It was Craig Hoffman. about like, hey, Dan needs to keep control of the defense because he's special. But when you hear Joe Whitt, it's not that he's hiring somebody else that doesn't know him to, hey, I'll school you real quick. Maybe you can implement this. And then Dan either has to be the babysitter the entire time or the unit's just going to suffer. Joe Whitt is like, it feels as though is an extension of Dan Quinn. They feel as though they're like they're a unit. And like he's taking a little piece of himself over here and can control and take care of it. And if you look at Joe Whitt and what he's been able to do, or you hear the stories about like even in Dallas, when Dan was taking care of this, that, and the other, Joe knew, all right, I need to get this guy out. This dude needs a breather. All right, we got to do this. We got to do that. He's the one taking care of the X's and O's, which allows, if you hear Dan has the defensive philosophies down, but what Dan is best at is being that leader of men. The same thing that we go back to Adam Peters and what was so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to jump over to Kliff Kingsbury just a little bit, when you hear when somebody asks Kliff, hey, what's Dan Quinn's involvement going to be here with this? And he said, as much as he wants. It's a team. Like, and when you realize, okay, if Kliff can't bring that energy that you need because he's mad scientisting the fuck out of the offense, here we got Dan that's going to keep and light a fire under these guys, right? Here, I know we didn't have an interview with, we didn't have a press conference with Anthony Lynn, but that's some motherfucker that can keep people. So it's like you have people that, to your point that you brought up a little earlier, in the sense of you're not as worried as I've kind of alluded to when it comes to that collaboration effort or too many cooks in the kitchen. What it does feel as though is that we have something where you have people that understand their strengths and weaknesses and know I can trust this guy to take care of this thing. And as long as they do their job and we can communicate and make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes, it could work. If anybody's issue with Kliff Kingsbury was the run game, so what is it? What do they do? Let's go hire a motherfucker that knows that shit inside and out. Let's do that. And then see how it works.
Exactly. Let me start with the home run person first and foremost. So that's Joe Whitt. Just because when you look at his track record in Green Bay, and when you look at it in Atlanta, in Dallas, and then working with Dan Quinn and being an extension of Dan Quinn, as K-Dot had just mentioned, and then you see Dan Quinn's record with defenses where he did it in Seattle. He did it to a degree in Atlanta. He definitely did it in Dallas. These guys know what the fuck they're doing. So let's start there. And when I hear the same person and the same ideas from two different humans, that is a good thing. And when they prioritize turnovers the way that they do, that is a good thing. I'm sorry?
You got the quote, right? You want to read the quote.
The ball is life, baby. I mean,
football is life. Football is like air. You gotta have it. The fuck is that?
Did you hear what he also said at the end? Well, I'll get there in a moment. But
arriving violently and turn the ball over.
No, see, the thing is, I was taking notes, K-Dot, and then I legitimately felt I was getting emotional listening to him because I paused and I was just like, yes. Like, yes. Like, everything he said was perfect. Never mind name dropping Ryan Clark as your best friend. Sean Taylor is your favorite football player.
Marcus Washington, my favorite guy.
Washington, who's like pumped for. I mean, you could not have scripted that better. It was incredible from a press conference perspective. But the thing I like, again, is that they actually have a track record. And he even mentioned after they had the turnovers, or they led the league in turnovers back to back in terms of takeaways, Dan Quinn immediately is like, how do we generate more? Because he knows you need to adapt. That's why they brought in so many different people from so many different places, because they need different ideas.
Yep.
Thing I wanted to focus on there is we talked about too many cooks. Well, he talked about specializing and making sure that you take away the gray area for players so that they can play fast. That is an absolute echo of what Dan Quinn had mentioned about being explosive and physical. You don't want the players to think out there. We had mentioned that, actually. We sort of drew that assumption out, and Joe Whitt spelled it perfectly. You don't want them thinking out there. The thing I really loved was when talking about turnovers, because that is something where I would understand the skepticism amongst fans. Emmanuel Forbes didn't have a good year. Let's be real. He did not. And then we just haven't generated that many turnovers over the years. And he talks about at the end of practice every single day that they work on catching the ball, that they work on picking up loose balls when they're dog shit tired and they're just exhausted. That's when they're doing it. It's going to become second nature, man. These guys know what they're doing. Someone asked them about finding specific profiles in certain positions. And I was like, that is exactly what Adam Peters has been talking about. And then someone says, can you give us one? He goes, no. I'm not doing that. That is what is good for us. There is a reason this works. So sorry, I'm not telling you. I could not be more fired up about not just what he was saying, but that it was so in sync. Because when Eric Bieniemy was here, he had his press conference that everybody loved, myself included. But looking back, it was in no way in sync with Ron. It was just Eric being Eric, and that was it. But this is actually proven. They're together. They've come together. I'm very excited about Joe Whitt.
I think you remember after the Eric Bieniemy thing. I think we did it on after the pod where I was very hesitant to criticize Eric Bieniemy because I can't. But I was like, Saul feels a little hollow.
That's true.
I feel as though everyone I've seen so far that they've introduced to us are showing us their authentic self. Like when I hear them talk, like I get some people say the talking points. Maybe these are talking points that they go over. You can go. Everyone has YouTube. You're watching us on YouTube, most likely, if you're not listening to us on Spotify. Go type any one of these guys in to YouTube and go pull up any interview they did, any shitty thing they did with the social media team for whatever prospective team they are. You're going to hear the same through lines here. The only thing you hear now is a wisdom that they might not have had 5 or 6 years ago, right? Like you'll hear them just they feel stronger in their principles, and most of these guys have experienced success in those principles. And there was a Joe Whitt, just my favorite words, right? My favorite C words: communication and collaboration. I'm a great listener. He said that,
and I'm a great communicator.
I'm great. Like he's like, I want the players of. When he talked about how sometimes rookie players might feel afraid to ask questions in front of the veterans. So we'll make sure they'll have space to do so. I'm like, yo, can I come work? Can I get in that bill? Like that to me.
He gets it.
This is everything that we've been clamoring for here on this pod. Everything that me and you have gone back and forth for. If you go to last year, when we look at our offseason wish list, when we go about what roles people should have, when you go through like what it is the team should be like, you're seeing all this nailed. You're seeing an identity. And I know this C word has been a naughty word the last few weeks, but you're seeing a culture being built from the ground up. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing these guys that they're finding from all walks of life that understand the same core principles, and they understand they have different ways of getting there, and they're going to work together to get there. That to me is what's the most important thing this franchise has needed. It is not relying on any one man, any one system. It is a culture. It is something that is ingrained in the fabric of the organization, that this is what our standard is. This is what we're going to do. That's what the Baltimores do. That's what the Patriots have done. That's what the Steelers do. We are going back to what it is that we should have always been. Post Joe Gibbs, which is we know who we are.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that he talked about, I think it was Scott Abraham from ABC that had asked, hey, how do you transfer that leadership to your players? Right. And he said consistency. I'm always going to be the same guy day in and day out, because you can't pick the days where you demand from people more. But what was sort of, to me, a mind-blowing answer, because it's not always what you see in modern day society, but he sort of pushed against it. And K-Dot, I suspect you already know what I'm talking about. So he said that, he gets in and leaves at the same time every single day. And he said, I actually find it strange when people lose 2 or 3 in a row and then they stay longer, because what that implies is that you were cheating us this whole time, that you could have put in more work, but you didn't. And now you are, because things are going south. He said, I'm leaving the same time every single day because I'm already giving you everything that I have. And that opened my mind to, that is what consistency is. It's not just the time you're there. It is the effort that's being put in, and that is going to allow your players to connect with you. And so, again, that was Joe Whitt's side of thing. Again, this could be a 10-hour long episode on just Joe Whitt and how amazing that was. And again, echoing Dan, I want to touch on.
It's the C's.
Where's the shoes, bro?
Communication, collaboration, consistency, culture, championships.
Yeah, and I apologize to you guys listening because I mean we're just excited. It's been a while. We've been waiting for this. We've been doing this podcast for years. It's finally feels like
Everything's
it's
happened the
coming
way I
together.
wanted it to happen.
Exactly.
Everything's happening
Shout
the way
out to
I
Kate
want
out
it
there.
to happen.
I want to talk about Kliff Kingsbury because it was a different energy to his press conference. Again,
Mhm.
people asked about the Raiders fiasco, like what happened over there. Didn't get into it. They asked about Caleb Williams. He's a good kid. Like he didn't give much of anything, to be honest, and I didn't mind that. Again, because when we see different coaching staffs, we see you don't want the same person everywhere. I like it with Dan and Joe, but I like that Kliff's his own guy. It's actually a good thing here because when you look at other places, the two that pop to mind immediately are Detroit with Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, clearly the more quiet guy, just like a leave me alone. I want to work on my offense. And Dan is the leader, right? And then you look at even where is it? Houston, right? Where D'Amico is the leader, D'Amico Ryans. And then you got Bobby Slowick. He's young. He's just also like leave me to my X's and O's and stuff like that. Kliff is kind of in a strange way, sort of striking me in a similar fashion. We'll see if it ends up proving to be the case. And Joe Whitt, sorry, brought him up again, but he even mentioned the across the hall dynamic of I will go into the offensive coordinator's office and say, hey, this schematically is tough for us to deal with. I'm just letting you know. So we're working on this, but this concept is really hard for us. I'm willing to bet it's harder for other teams. And then Kliff mentioned collaboration with Dan, with Adam Peters. He shouted out Adam Peters a whole bunch. There's going to be a lot of that togetherness. And I actually, ironically, given how little Kliff gave us, that gives me more confidence in him. I don't know what you think, K-Dot.
No, this is so. I think I sent you that article from I think it was Sam Fortier. They did for the Ringer years back.
Yeah.
When he went down to Texas Tech and was with Kliff Kingsbury and talked about like how early he got there in the morning and his white Escalade and how he was reading the book about how what it takes 10,000 hours of doing anything to become an expert or a master at it. And he got frustrated because he did the math on how long it would take to do it. But the idea as far as like him not being the most comfortable person in front of everybody, which I don't understand. With those looks and that voice, you should be, motherfucker. But beyond those things, there is an
People are calling
element.
him Barry White in the comments, by the way.
There's a reason he has that house and that wife. Just saying. And there's a reason he probably gets all them gigs. He bestamizes my damn. The idea is that like he's best when he's left to his own devices trying to work. You can see he's much more of an intimate dude when it comes to that collaboration and communication stuff. He wants to. The best example I'll probably use for this, and knowing we're Commanders fans here, Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs was known as a dude that basically lived in the office and he was watching film. And you see Kliff talk about it. He ranks all the college offenses. He goes through all the systems and everything. Joe Gibbs used to, you can hear any of these stories about it. Joe Gibbs would like first day of training camp or first day, he'd walk into practice and he would say, there are three things that you need to consider. The three things that are most important. Number one is your relationship with God. Number two is your relationship with friends and family. Number three is being the best damn football player you can be. Now go break up and be with your coaches. And he'd leave and they wouldn't see him. Because you had Joe Bugle. You had all these dudes that were on this team that were like, we know what Joe wants. We know what he needs, and we're going to execute. And because he was the offensive guru, they understood and they could go and get the best out of the players from it. There is an element of like, I don't need to be I'm the guy who's coming up with the scheme as best I can, and I need my time to be the mad scientist to get that done. And as long as everybody can understand where I'm coming from, then they can go and implement my vision. And when you have a guy like Dan Quinn who can keep the guys motivated, then you don't have to worry about toes getting stepped on. Because this dude's like, I'm going to put together the best fucking offense I can put together. I'll probably talk to the quarterback. I'll probably talk to the position coach, make sure they're aware of this. If I see this, I'm going to talk to this guy, that guy, and they'll be able to figure it out. Kliff, you can see there's a bit of relief from him to be able to focus on the shit he wants to focus on.
He even mentioned that, just saying, I could just focus on the offense here. People asked about the difference in the past between Texas Tech, between Arizona, USC here. Yeah, I could just focus on the offense here, which is nice. Also wanted to mention that both Joe Whitt Jr. and Kliff Kingsbury cited that Dan is the guy in charge, that they're going to lean on him, that it is collaborative, of course. And also just speaking specifically to Kliff Kingsbury's offense, because there was some concern, hey, we're going air raid, and that is a certainty. He actually pushed back on that a little bit in the press conference, because what he ended up saying was that, hey, we threw it a lot because we had Patrick Mahomes in Texas Tech. We, at Case, we had guys that had a ton of talent at that level, and so we used it. We are going to adapt to our personnel. And that was another thing that Joe had also mentioned. So you are getting that unified approach of adapting to personnel. And with Anthony Lynn in the building and the ability to adapt to personnel, we don't know yet what this offense looks like just yet. The only thing we do know is that he wants a degree of mobility from his quarterback when a play breaks down, which is standard stuff. So that's all we really got from it, was that, hey, it's not necessarily air raid, that both units are capable of adapting to the modern NFL. Dan Quinn has proven he can do that on the defensive side of the ball. Joe Witt's been alongside him for some of it. And Kliff Kingsbury appears to be wanting to prove the same thing. And now Anthony Lynn is here as well. I imagine those two will collaborate quite a bit, along with Brian Johnson, of course, assistant head coach. How could I forget? Such a loaded coaching staff, K-Dot.
Yeah, there was one specific quarterback,
David Blau as well.
Yeah,
please.
There was who looks like, in the way that Kliff talked about him, that might be your guy.
And everybody that knows anything about him, when you look on X or Twitter, they're like, "Hey, this guy knows his stuff. Maybe he didn't make it as a starter in the league, but he knows his stuff. Very smart guy." Yeah,
right. But the quote that, and this was very, very similar to what Dan Quinn has said, as we talk about keeping that through line message, being able to adapt to your personnel, do what you do best, and not ask them to do what they can't. Yep. That to me has been you got to be able to run the football in 4 minutes and throw it in 2 minutes. This is a dude that sounds adaptable. He doesn't sound as like what we've kind of been used to recently here in Washington, which is, I don't give a fuck what you do, you're going to fit what it is that I want you to do. And there has been a stubbornness here in this city for quite some time offensively.
We have had that situation with both units last year.
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead. Maybe all three. Who knows? Shout out Larry Izzo as well for getting the special teams coordinator.
I'm so excited about the Izzo thing. His DVOA has not gone below 10 since he's been like, the special teams is fucking important. Go look at that Super Bowl.
Yep, exactly. And speaking of, why don't we go ahead and talk about the Super Bowl? So the Kansas City Chiefs, it's a dynasty. 3 and 4 years. Patrick Mahomes is not slowing down at all. It was a fun game, a bit slow at first from a points perspective. It was 10-6 late in the third. And then, as K-Dot had mentioned, that special teams play occurs. Ball ends up hitting one of the gunners. Ray-Ray McCloud fails to recover it. By some people are saying he should have dove on it. Other people are like, it was sort of a freak play. Whatever it may be, it changed the game. And the Chiefs were within striking distance. Next thing you know, they are Super Bowl champions. What did you make of the game, K-Dot?
Was boring as shit up till a certain point. Then it got super exciting. But I know where I was watching the game, me and my buddy, we had a lot of money on the fucking game. And it worked out.
I was gonna say congrats on winning based on what you told me. Yeah.
But there was an element of like the entire time you're just like, all right, this game is shaping up to have a great ending. That's what we kept telling each other. This game is shaping up to have a really good ending, and it paid off. I mean, overtime in the Super Bowl is always fucking great. Some of the controversy as far as some of the decision making. I'm not as hard pressed on Kyle Shanahan as far as
very hard pressed on it. We'll get.
I'll say this. The entire. Do you want the ball first? Do you want the ball second in overtime? I will say this. I initially had a reaction that was very much, what the fuck? After hearing it and then looking, I know you're an analyst guy more than I'm an analyst guy, but actually hearing about the data on it, I can understand the thought process. I wouldn't do it because I don't want to give Patrick Mahomes 4 downs each fucking.
Oh, by the way, after I heard his explanation, I thought it was even worse than originally imagined, and I'll explain analytically why that is too.
But I'll say this: the reason it to me was so egregious. It's still egregious to me, but the reason it was egregious is when you hear the Chiefs players knowing what they were going to do in that time, and they had talked through it since before the season started. They knew. And you have the 49ers players talking to each other on the sideline. So what happens now? We do what? Huh? That's not a good look, bro. Like,
Can I quickly chime in for a moment and just
Yeah.
say, by the way, as it pertains to our coaching staff, this feels much more collaborative. I imagine we would be prepared for that type of situation with the coaches that we have.
You'd hope so. We got a bunch of them in San Francisco, guys.
They're about to learn what that looks like because to me, Kyle is beginning to paint himself more and more as an individual that is a genius, but he doesn't reveal everything to his players. You don't need to reveal absolutely everything, but you should talk about that because multiple 49ers players came out and said they did not know. That is crazy for them not to know that. Sure, they can look it up themselves. Absolutely. But that is insane.
Did you see the inside of the NFL?
I saw pieces of inside the NFL. I saw
like in
Kyle
real
Juszczyk
time.
go,
They're
hey, did
what?
you know that they're going to get it? I didn't know that. And I was like,
Wait, and, and then the juxtaposition is Patrick Mahomes. They want the what? What?
They said they wanted it.
And then run up
and
the
Travis
said they
is like,
wanted
give
it.
him the ball. Give him the ball. Let's
It's
go.
like one team's prepared, one team's not. And the other, and look, I've been saying that look, I like Kyle Shanahan. I like what they do in San Francisco, but I've also been telling everybody that Kyle's an asshole. There's no getting around it. And him firing Steve Wilkes to me was very much asshole-ish behavior because he did not deserve to be the scapegoat for that shit.
Especially the way that game went.
Especially the way that game. Well, the thing is that you knew it was over when the timeout got called, and he changed the defense and they give up points anyway. It was like, I don't love that. But then you also you got to look at Kyle himself and be like, it's years back. Kobe Bryant was trying to prove a point where it was like everybody was telling him he needed to pass the ball more, so he had that game where he refused to shoot.
Oh, right.
Being an absolute dick. It's like you learn the wrong lesson. You're being an asshole. I'm not saying Kyle is that far, but Kyle took what he learned from the Atlanta Falcons 28-3 loss and applied it incorrectly. So like it's the criticism of the Falcons game was, why'd you take your foot off the gas? It was working. Stick with it. Now it's the thing that's working, Kyle, is running the ball. Like you don't need to keep throwing the thing. Like, what are you doing, man? What the fuck are you doing?
I'll say it bluntly. He's learned to get in his head. That's it. He is you can see him overthinking. Like even this going third, this was my problem with it. So going third analytically is all good and fine. And I am an analyst, and trust me, I love going through numbers. I create my own spreadsheets and I pull data down, and I've shown you, and like I enjoy doing that stuff, and I will continue to do that stuff. However, it is the Super Bowl. It is the fifth quarter. People are dog shit tired. You've lost Dre Greenlaw. You need to factor in that you don't even fucking trust your defensive coordinator, as it turns out. So when you put those things together and you are giving arguably the GOAT all the information he needs to figure out how to win, my problem was the game was over with that coin toss, because the moment you decide to take it, there was zero doubt in my mind, K-Dot, that Kansas City was going to go down and score, go for two, and they were going to get that as well because they were going to get out coached. So even if you scored a touchdown, you kick the extra point, you lose by 1 instead of losing by 3. That is the only difference to me. I understand that maybe a ball gets tipped or whatever, but that's where the greatness of Mahomes comes in. That's where the greatness of Andy Reid comes in. That's where the greatness of Travis Kelce comes in. And that's where momentum comes in. And those are the things that are not accounted for. I'm sorry. If you went against Buffalo, yeah, maybe you can, but you have to understand what you're going against. And he didn't. And that was the problem there. They lost the moment they chose to take the ball.
There
was no third.
Here's the thing. I'm going to make sure that I crop this. Anytime me and you get a fucking debate about analytics and what it doesn't fucking cover, because my problems with it.
Listen, I am one of the few that is an analyst that actually goes against it a good amount of times. And so that is where I'm in this very unique space. So go ahead.
I'm glad. Okay. I will.
That was so dumb. That was so dumb.
Trust me,
Mahomes. Anyway, go ahead.
I didn't agree with it, and I don't think analytics does a good enough job taking into account personnel. I just don't. Or in situation. And they say, well, it all comes out there at the end because of the data points, and there's enough numbers on this, so we have enough data to get. I just don't think it does a good job with that. Once again, I did not at all. If it was up to me, I would have not have decided to do that. I'm just saying I understood the argument. It wasn't as egregious as I initially thought. I would not have done it, And I also think just because the fact that the guys were not prepared makes me believe you were scrambling and you probably got it wrong.
And if you think your defense is tired, by the way, and you are choosing to take a field goal, that's an interesting choice if you feel that you
There's
don't
also
trust your
that.
defense.
I just don't think he was ready.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. Hey, Kyle, he's an asshole. He's a ballsy motherfucker, too. Try an onside kick after you score and see if you just recover. The game's over. I looked it up after. I was like, does that count as a possession? Does that count as an opportunity to possess for the Kansas City Chiefs? It does. So they could have kicked a field goal. And again, if you have all those question marks, try the fucking onside kick. You recover. It's over. I'm sure the Chiefs players are so focused on making sure they get back that you might actually sneak that in. So anyway, there's a lot in there.
Ain't that bullshit. That's Dan Campbell.
The moment
there's one of one.
The Lions would win that way. But the I wouldn't put it past Kyle to do that.
Probably lose.
I wouldn't put it past Kyle to do that. Less yards for the defense to have to cover. But
I think he's afraid.
I thought the field goal was a mistake. Because here's the other thing. That takes away Mahomes' fourth down that he can work with potentially because the game's still tied. So, and they have to go further if you don't get it. So there was also that aspect of it. Where did that factor in? I don't know. It's a very, very interesting discussion. I am very firmly on one side of it, which is that Kyle fucked that game up ultimately. And actually, to me, I thought Brock Purdy played pretty well.
He did.
Yeah. So I know some people are like, oh, see, told you. I'm not entertaining that argument. He gave them a lead 3 different times, one of which was the field goal, but that was dumb.
I know you were not looking forward to that being a point that people were bringing up for the next few months. Was the
and they will, but I feel comfortable enough with his performance that I don't mind it.
Yeah, I didn't give a fuck what. When we said the best unit, it was the Kansas City Chiefs. To me, was the best unit in the game. Yes. Their cornerbacks proved, in my opinion, that they're the best duo in football.
Trent McDuffie was outstanding.
So, like, did it happen the way we thought it was going to happen? Yeah, and that's just what it boils down to. Like, they won. I think I had it a little closer than you did when we were doing the.
I said 28-17. I did not think. See, Purdy played better than I thought he would.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's just hell of a game, and I do. The only thing I'll say is that I think dynasty gets thrown around a little too much. I'd say this is the beginning of a dynasty. Because I only really think there have ever been truly like 4 or 5 dynasties ever. Okay. I just think that I think that, like, when I look at the Boston Celtics and like those championships with Bill Russell, that to me is a dynasty. When you look at what the Patriots accomplished with that many championships, that's a dynasty. When you look at the Bulls, that to me is a dynasty. I think the other ones are great runs and amazing teams, but the thing that's so crazy about the Chiefs is how young Mahomes is and how shitty that wide receiving core was.
That's the thing. They have cap space, by the way. Now they need to re-sign Chris Jones. I anticipate that occurring, but this isn't the Tyreek Hill trade. Actually worked out very, very well for these guys.
100%.
So I mean, yeah,
and it worked. I think you talked about it earlier, maybe in the other pod. It forced Mahomes to elevate his game. He got too comfortable with Tyreek at a certain point in time. He needed to diversify, so it was good. And I think before we get off of this, just to rest in peace to the person that was killed in the Chiefs parade and the senseless fucking violence that happened with what was it, like 11 kids?
Ultimately 22 injured.
22 injured
might be a second person dead. Like,
ridiculous. And I mean, if you're listening to this, you're probably in and around the Washington, D.C. area. We are no strangers to gun violence here. It's just, I don't know when it's going to hit that it's enough's enough, but every day I lose hope that we'll ever get there.
I know. And I mean, we're already averaging 1 mass shooting a day, over that, actually. And it's, you know what's unfortunate? So thoughts and prayers is just so watered down at this point. It's completely lost its meaning to me. So has absolutely heartbroken. Like it's just frustrating. It is super frustrating that this continues to happen. And all I can say, and I can say this honestly, be safe, be careful, because it doesn't appear to be changing. So just, I mean, do whatever necessary checks you feel to feel comfortable, because shit's sad, man. And like you said, rest in peace to the person that did pass away over this absolutely senseless violence.
I'm staring at my 12 gauge right now.
There you go. On that note, why don't we go to the comment mailbag? it's a pretty smooth transition to the comment mailbag over there, where we have 10 comments, and we do thoroughly appreciate the comments, guys. So why don't we
Mostly.
go ahead and that's where we're divided. I appreciate all of them. K-Dot appreciates the ones that agree with him and call him.
No. Just come correct.
Fair enough. So why don't we go ahead and start with Vindo, who says good video. I think he came correct there. That's a good comment.
Vindo,
We appreciate that. Vindo. We got David Wright, 4085. Kliff Kingsbury ran the damn ball. Okay, maybe he did. Again, we'll look more into that. There were so many coaching hires who didn't really get the chance to study Kliff Kingsbury's offense. And he did say, hey, we don't know what this is just yet, essentially. So curious to see what ends up happening there. We go over to Just Listening 8413. Shout out, Just Listening 8413. Yes. First time tuning in. I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised at the different take that you guys had on things. It was mainly more cerebral, and to me, that is not a bad thing. It was different. Given the current makeup of this 4-win roster, do you guys see a massive turnover coming? What building blocks do you see staying, and what mainstays are leaving? Inquiring minds would like to know. Again, thanks for a good YouTube visit. And thanks for the comment there, Just Listening. Really appreciate you taking the time to stop by. Hope you're watching right now.
Absolutely.
Thoroughly appreciate that. So again, the question there, K-Dot, is do you see massive turnover coming to the roster? And if so, who do you see staying? Who do you see going?
I don't necessarily think they'll be massive. I think we have a few key names, guys that I think everybody are kind of sweet to. So like the big names that cost a lot of money, your Jonathan Allen, your Deron Paynes, maybe one of them go on the move, depending on what it is we want to do. Maybe we get into Justin Fields, but I think they're both going to stay. I think that you're going to see a lot of carryover because I think what you're going to see, if we're right, and I think we've been pretty right this fucking offseason, is them really evaluating and realizing that these guys weren't coached up the way they need to be.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo K-Dot sentiments there. At the moment you started saying, and you and I have been saying, I was like, okay, here we go. We believe in these players. Yep. I do think that there is a good deal of talent here. Excited for Jamin Davis, for example. I think he's going to be a very key piece over here. And Joe Whitt Jr. had mentioned Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin. He was asked about Emmanuel Forbes, and he went out of his way to mention Quan as well and say, hey, I like him too. So I anticipate that the defense, you might be surprised at how little change there is there. I think we've got good pieces there. As for the offense, of course, we got picked 2 overall. A lot of people are saying quarterback. We'll see if we stay there. We'll see if we trade down, trade up. There's a lot to go through still, Just Listening.
Justin Fields.
But that's not for me. That is not for me. I will tell you that right now. But we'll see. We'll see. Hey, he's mobile. Kliff likes mobile. Not Kirk Cousins. And then we appreciate the comment there. We go over to Hermit Rob 5481. Shout out.
Hermit Rob.
The only time I'm opposed to retreads is if the game has clearly passed them by. Like you can tell that they've quit evolving, which is the kiss of death in the NFL. So true. Dan's the right guy at the right time for this franchise. The last time we had owner, GM, head coach symmetry was Mr. Cook, Beathard, and Gibbs.
Yep.
It matters. Appreciate the comment there, Herman. Rob, I totally agree. K-Dot, I imagine you totally agree because that's all you've been saying for quite some time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to have everybody on the same page. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Appreciate the comment there. Then we go over to Blood Clot. Shout out Blood Clot.
Yep.
Oh, gee. So is Vindo for that matter. I'm going to say Niners over Chiefs 34-32. Tell you what, the game was close. Niners will be spanking Chiefs first half as everyone watches in disbelief. And to a degree, the Chiefs were a bit shell-shocked. Come on. They didn't score a touchdown until late in the third quarter, and they needed the punt. Anyway, Mahomes is
He
just
said
off.
spank their asses, did he not?
No, he said spanking Chiefs first half. That's it.
Spanking means where else you spanking? I mean, you can spank something else, but that's
a
whole
know where
different
Blood
meaning.
Clot spanks. Anyway, 49ers will be spanking Chiefs first half as everyone watches in disbelief. Mahomes is just off, but second half. They come back strong in the most Mahomes way. Game comes down to a field goal. Chiefs miss right off the upright. Niners win. We will never see Taylor Swift again. If I nail that prediction, that's like winning back-to-back trifectas at Preakness. And if you had, perhaps it would have been Blood Clot, but unfortunately for you, the Kansas City Chiefs prevailed. Again, it's their third Super Bowl, 4 years.
We are all
Impressive.
Swifties.
We're all Swifties. Is it third in 4 years or third in 5? It's 4, right?
What?
The Chiefs.
What
I've
about
been
'em?
saying 3 and 4 years. Maybe I've just had the Patriots, or is it 3 and 5? I think it's
I
3
thought
and
it's
4.
4.
It is
Yeah,
3 and 4.
4.
Okay, cool. Oh,
Yeah,
Siri
it's
wants
4.
to chime in now. I don't know why. Hold on. It's listening. Anyway, it's about to listen to this comment from Kenny B.
No, it might be
5412. Shout
5.
out Kenny B.
It might be
Is it
5.
5?
God damn it. I'm holding this fucking surge protector that I have taped to my desk,
Yeah.
and it's coming apart. So I think if I let it go.
We were both actually experiencing tech issues there because Siri actually took your volume away from me completely
Oh, wow.
briefly. Yeah. Siri was just like, hey, I'm just having a good time over here. But Kenny B 5412 writes, just found you guys. Good stuff. Keep it up. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you.
Appreciate the comment over there. And we go over to Wayne Owens, 4322. Shout out, Wayne. I have to say, Super Bowl set up for the Kansas City Chiefs to win, but I believe anything
5.
could happen. It is 3 and 5 years.
Yeah, I could remember
I was so used to. I was like, wait a minute. I've been saying this on autopilot.
the
thinking
Rams
about the
Bengals.
Pats. Yes,
Rams Bengals Super Bowl.
that's the one I was missing. Thank you. So I apologize. It's been 3 and 5 years. Mahomes has been to 4. That's what it is. Right. That's what I've been thinking. So 3 and 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure that irks some people. So my bad. I have to say, this is Wayne Owens again. Shout out Wayne. I have to say, Super Bowl set up for the Kansas City Chiefs to win, I believe, but anything could happen. I was hoping for the first time Detroit Lions Super Bowl win. Detroit had that game, man, in the NFC Championship game, and well, they could have taken the points and made it a 3-possession game, and who knows? But unfortunately, they did not do that. And go ahead.
I mean, I was right. I've been right about every game the last 3 weeks.
You've been on fire. I will say that you have been on fire. You're killing it. Good for you. And the coaching. Anyway, it's chaos.
I won a Patrick Mahomes MVP bet that I placed back in December.
Super Bowl MVP bet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Good odds.
I was like, because, yeah, all right.
Yeah, Super Bowl MVP. Sorry. I knew he wasn't in running for MVP.
You should probably check again. You've just been telling people you won that? All right, cool. And then go over to
one DraftKings, man.
Go over to Unix Fan 1891. It's time viewer, I think. Type of first time viewer, great show. Appreciate the comment there, Unix Man. Thank you. And then we go over to Pally for Life. Been a while since we've heard from Pally for Life. Predictions on point as usual, gentlemen. What a Super Bowl. Separately, Mailbag has been fire recently, so shout out to all of you that have been commenting. A couple quick notes. Number one, if you're new to this channel, share this shit.
Share it.
Appreciate that. Pally for Life. And the second one, Mahomes is Robin Hood, stealing from the books and giving to the public. Mr. X. I actually kind of like that because the heater these guys have been on, the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have been underdogs in their last 3 games. And if you look by DVOA, you saw, I'm sure you guys saw that tweet floating around, how this was the toughest road to a Super Bowl victory, I think ever, or at least in the Super Bowl era.
Yep.
I mean, Mahomes is Robin Hood, K-Dot. He is.
Yeah.
Making all sorts of money for the people.
Never mind.
No, you got to say it.
Fire country. Pally for Life will understand what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. That was for you, Pally for Life.
Fire
we go over
country.
to Tony.
Tony.
Shout out, Tony. Oh, gee. You guys are growing. Yes, we are. And it's a big thanks to you, Tony. Appreciate it. I'm so glad Chase Young didn't lag into a Super Bowl ring. I tell you what, Chase, appreciate the comment there, Tony. Chase had himself a nice little Super Bowl. He got the sack. He got an intentional grounding. And I think he was pretty close to getting a 3rd sack. Like, he played well, honestly, for his role, which was incredible because before that, there was even that rumor that he was going to be benched for the Super Bowl.
Lit a fire.
I mean, the talent, no one can deny the talent, but the motor hasn't always been there with him, but he showed out in the Super Bowl. Fair play to him.
Yeah, no, there's no taking away from it. There were moments where I was like, oh, maybe I wasn't completely wrong about wanting to keep Chase, right? Because it was looking bad. It was looking bad.
Yes.
Just took a fire, lit under him, and he played his ass off. I mean, I know a lot of 49ers fans are talking about Nick Bosa getting held, this, that, and the other, but Chase showed up. It just wasn't enough. And I think one thing we didn't mention, I think in the lead up to the Super Bowl, was that Adam Peters would have gotten a ring.
That's right. Someone I feel like had asked that in the prior
Oh, did they?
episode.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did say, I believe, that
would.
he would have gotten a ring. Yes.
And part of me was like, man, I do kind of wish our guys would have got one, but I also think that this could light a fire under their asses to go get one with us.
Most certainly could. That was the comment mailbag. This was District Divided, a DC sports podcast, more specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode where we rounded out the coaching staff hires that have occurred. All of them have, and then our thoughts on Joe Whitt Jr. and Kliff Kingsbury. We'd love to hear yours as well. And then the Super Bowl recap comment mailbag. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment as you always do, and K-Dot.
Share this shit.
Oh, I like the rhythm there.
Share it.
Share this shit. We greatly appreciate you guys for listening. And after the pod begins right now.
Sydney Sweeney is a 7 out of 10.
Why don't you go ahead and elaborate on that, bud?
I love Sydney Sweeney. I think she's been fucking phenomenal in like 2 things. Like Euphoria, great. White Lotus, amazing. But the vibe I'm getting, once again, I'm rooting for her. I think she gets terribly miscast. That goddamn rom-com she had with Glenn Powell, Anyone But You, didn't work. She just doesn't have the charismatic chops just yet. Also, I feel as though the grand discussion about Sydney Sweeney reminds me of Jennifer Aniston in the 90s, which is the world would like you to believe that here is the finest white woman to ever walk the face of the earth. When in all reality, when I see, I'm like, okay. Like,
don't you think a 7's a bit low, though?
No, okay.
Do you think you're doing? I felt like you're doing that for shock value.
No. Hang on. Sorry.
Okay. Please explain.
She's an 8. No, you know what? She's an 8. You know what? In our walks of life, because here's what on this scale, I'm a 2, maybe 1.52. I live off of charisma. Okay.
Scaling it. Okay. Got it. So got it.
What I'm saying is that in the sense of the hype that she gets via media and all kinds of shit,
it doesn't match. I get what you're saying.
Now, would I drop my girlfriend for Sydney? I won't comment. You can.
You want to throw that in the comment mailbag?
Just say, she's gonna fuck. We got in an argument today. She's gonna hate me for that. And if she listens,
if you're listening,
hey, don't say that name, you son of a bitch. Don't say that. You better bleep that.
You know I don't know how to. Listen, what we'll do is we'll read that comment. I can turn the volume down on that part.
This is my sanctuary. She doesn't care about sports. I can say shit here. Okay? What are you doing? You collide my worlds.
It's after the pod. There are no rules about
worlds collide, man. No, I got to keep them separate. See, now you got me afraid to say shit. Can't have this. Got to be a safe place. I'm sorry for. No. There's no take. I'm sorry for everything I just said about Sydney Sweeney. She's a goddess, and I love my girlfriend quite a bit. Sydney's not for me. Neither is Jennifer Aniston. I'm a one-woman man.
Yes,
okay?
you are.
I only have eyes for one.
That's correct.
Side of Florence Pugh, but that's it. And Alicia Keys in that dress.
Hey, Midsommar. Did we ever talk about Midsommar?
It's one of my favorite films.
Oh my gosh, it was freaky though.
I actually right there. I have a collector's Blu-ray with a book and a hardbound print.
Oh, fuck me. Bad hosting. We didn't mention the front office moves. That's on me. Just a real quick shout out, just because clearly the energy is elsewhere. Lance Newmark from Detroit, now the assistant GM over here. He spent 26 years over in Detroit. And Sarah Hogan from Atlanta, who I know you're pretty hype about. She is officially the coaching chief of staff. I feel like we'll figure out what that means over time, but congrats to Sarah and congrats to Lance for being part of the organization as well. K-Dot, go ahead.
I see after my whole rant about Sydney Sweeney, you're just going to drop the woman in our organization and how that's a good... Fuck you. All right, so...
Nothing gets past you. Go ahead.
Son of a bitch. Lance being there in Detroit for like damn near 30 years and surviving through all those different regimes, I mean, he does something well. Yes. That's a good mark. Plus, he's the Lions have always been one of those organizations, along with the Cleveland Browns and Yeah, there are a few organizations you always hear about the front offices being ranked really, really high as far as like trustworthiness and what they do with scouting, this, that, and the other. They might not have always had the success, but they've always been known as having some good dudes there. And as far as Sarah goes, I know that when we were doing our wish list, one of the people that I wanted high up in the front office on the not football side, but more on the business side and taking care, or even from a football side, contracts and things like that, was Donna Ponte, who works for the league office. And Sarah named her one of her mentors when she was there at the New York Jets at one point. So she was there in Atlanta. She's a name that a lot of people within league circles really know a whole hell of a lot about. And what it seems as though her job's going to be akin to like a chief of staff in the White House is she's going to take care of all the nitty gritty. The what you're seeing more and more is that they're having people in the organization that can take care of shit that you don't have to continue to follow up on. And it allows people to focus on their job instead of having to multitask or not be able to trust somebody getting the job done here and there. Because that's what happens, right? Like you end up having a coach, you have somebody in the front office that's like, hey, get X, Y, and Z done. And they don't, or they do a shit job of it, which then you have to do it yourself. And at that point, when you had to do it yourself, it sowed seeds of resentment because the person's like, well, why don't you trust me to do it? Well, it's like, I don't trust you to do it because you don't do it right. And it just grows into a cancer. So like the idea that they have so many people that are so competent in what it is they do, I think allows the chemistry to sort of build on its own.
Competence, and they understand their roles and responsibilities, which is the most important bit. So they know where the buck stops in each situation. People could just focus on coaching. It's nice. I mean, this, again, whole structure, like you've been harping on for quite some time, is finally coming together over here, and it's nice. I want to touch on the Niners and some of the coaches they've now lost because of us and the Steve Wilkes thing. But I want to get back to Midsommar, because that to me was, I watched, so the first time I saw the movie, my ex had it on, and I just like walked in 20 minutes in. So I missed the beginning, which was very significant context, as it turns out.
Huge.
Try watching that movie without knowing what happens in the first 20 minutes and then seeing the entire thing.
I don't think I could understand.
Freaky watch. Because
the first 5 minutes the first 10 minutes of that movie are some of the most disturbing.
Well, yeah, and so I missed that. So I was like, why is she so like pissed off? Like, just, and then all of a sudden you see that and you're like, oh, upon rewatch, that recontextualizes the whole thing. I mean, Midsommar is fabulous in that it takes place during the day just about the whole time, right? Like all the freakiness and the music that's sort of offbeat, off rhythm. It gets you at a crazy place mentally. It's wild.
So Ari Aster's the director of Midsommar, who's one of my favorite directors. Anytime he's out, I'm there opening day. He did Hereditary, which is incredible. Toni Collette deserved an Academy Award for a performance in that. I love Midsommar. That's why Florence Pugh is my number one. I will tell you, probably because I rank Sydney Sweeney and talk and have my co-host drop my girlfriend's names, I've had very tumultuous relationships. I've been married. I've been divorced. Okay. Yeah, I take no responsibility. I've been married. I've been divorced. Common denominator. But I was in a relationship, and after I got a Midsommar, I was crying. I was weeping. And I went to the movie with a couple buddies, and they looked at me like I lost my goddamn mind. And I remember walking to the parking lot because it was late at night, and I said, I need to break up with my girlfriend. There are two movies that have done that. I connect really, really strongly to film. It's why I love it so much. But yeah, Midsommar was one of those ones where I had a revelation within the movie. And one of my favorite things to do for a good period of time after that movie came out is to ask couples whose side they are on in the relationship.
Excellent question.
You'd be very surprised how much it varies and how much, if you ask that question, you can do in a relationship immediately. It's so good. And then Ari Aster also did Beau is Afraid, which was made my top 4 movies coming out last year. Joaquin Phoenix. I love that movie. If there's an Ari Aster short film called This Is About the Johnsons, I'm going to spoil a little bit of it right here because Lord knows where it'll go to. But in the beginning of this short film, just to know where Ari Aster's brain is for people that don't know, and I know you probably not have heard of this film.
Oh, you know I
don't. The movie opens up like what happens in a lot of like adolescent comedy sort of movies. You have a teenage boy pleasuring himself in bed to a photo, and the door comes barging in, and it's his dad oh son, they have the whole like sitcom moment. It's okay, it's fine. Everybody has to do this, that, and the other. And as the father leaves the room, the camera zooms in to what the young boy was pleasuring himself to, and it's a picture of his father when he was younger. That's how it starts.
Wow. Intriguing.
I will
was
tell you
not
right now,
expecting that.
that is the
Clever.
calmest, and that's the calmest the movie's ever gonna be.
Oh my gosh.
That's the least of your worries in that film.
Talk about a twist. That's crazy.
Ari Aster is everything to me. And
Okay.
before I get off Ari Aster, Sydney Sweeney's a 10. Surefire 10.
Of course.
I'm so sorry. She's so down to earth, and she's awesome.
So sweet. I mean, just the best.
Somebody texted me something about it earlier, and I've just been on a fucking...
Yeah, I was gonna say because okay, so I mean, behind the curtain, we don't know what we're gonna say. Definitely after the pod. So when you started with that, I was like, all right, I guess this is where we're going with it. I wanted to know what sort of brought that on.
I think it's my issue with Jennifer Aniston more than it is with Sydney Sweeney.
Okay.
The Jennifer Aniston thing was, I was a kid in the 90s, and I remember watching the Today Show and everything else, and everyone was all about fucking Rachel. Rachel from Friends.
Oh, yeah.
Rachel. And in all honesty, like, I don't know. I just thought it was a little overrated. Plus, it spits in the face of what standards of beauty are supposed to be. Like, she's number one. This is what we're doing here. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, it just bothered me. And I know that's all. I don't know if that's. Here's the thing. Here's what I don't know. Maybe you could help me out with this.
Sure.
I don't know if my take on this is misogynistic or like extremely woke.
Do you think I can help you with this?
What? So
I'm just messing with you.
I'm angry about media coverage and beauty standards, but I'm also completely judging someone on the way they look.
You know what's interesting is I think I've sort of noticed similar things. So since doing the podcast and like actually trying to grow a Twitter following, trying to figure out how tags work and stuff like that, and then seeing, you learn a lot actually, sort of by accident, on how media works and the shit that they peddle. And it is crazy because you will see, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying as soon as I'm like talking out loud about this, but there are plenty of like actors or actresses that look significantly better to me than the ones that are being peddled.
Right.
And I think are even better actors and actresses, the same better looking person.
Right.
And it's crazy. So they do, it seems that there are certain favorites. I don't quite understand. I think each one is the favorite for a different reason because they're each their own. But like, yeah, I get the frustration. How about that? I get the frustration that you're experiencing right now.
Right. Their roles are being given because of what people think. And I'm like,
yes,
you've only been good in two things. I think you've been not just good, but fucking fantastic in those two things. And yet we can't get back there. Why is that? Are you getting more opportunities you probably should compared to other people in Hollywood that don't get them? Maybe. Or are we just looking for the right thing for you because we haven't been able to get because the other thing is that, and here's the one thing I don't necessarily feel bad about, is if you watch the roles in which she's in, she is clearly using the way she looks, or at least she's aware of what people thinks of the way that she looks when it comes to the movies.
Do you think that's directing? Do you think I don't know.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
She's under Dan Quinn or Joe Whitt. Like, are we talking about a different Sydney Sweeney here?
I don't know. But see, it goes both ways. Like, look, Cillian Murphy is a very striking person. You look at his face, you look at those eyes, it's like, whatever. You cannot tell me he's like classically beautiful or handsome. No. And he's fucking weird. And once again, I'm a 2.
Good actor.
It's that. I'm a 2.
He's a good actor.
He's a damn guy. He's great.
Yeah, he's incredible.
It's Willem Dafoe. That's a freaky looking motherfucker. Like, I love him, but he's a sex symbol. I'm like, it's Willem Dafoe, bro. Like, it's the Green Goblin mask. Wasn't that far off? Like, what are we doing?
There's a lot of arbitrary stuff. I completely agree.
I am never going to have a Hollywood show. I am never going to be able to do any of this shit that I want to do. I might have ruined everything in this one fucking pod. God damn it. My relationships,
pretty electric after
bud.
the pod. But hey, on the other side of this after the pod, just full of possibility.
Yo, share most of this shit. Just tell people to turn it off before the after the pod. Like, hey, it's a good show about the Commanders when they're talking about the Commanders.
I'm gonna put a time code for that exact moment and just not insert name here.
God damn it.
Oh man. Well, actually,
These are all jokes.
what's not is that this was the hard stop. This was just your dramatic DC Sports podcast. Thank you guys for listening.
I gotta go rush to her right now, knowing everything that just went down.
You got a bit
You
of
gotta
time
look at
before
me.
this comes out. You're like, hey, babe, something's about to come out Friday, 2 p.m. And I
This
just
is
need
my
to get ahead of
birthday
it.
weekend. That's all I want. This is supposed to be the
Happy
weekend,
birthday.
and Mike, this is supposed to be the weekend, and I get everything I want. Watch me get the end of a relationship.
No comment. Talk to you guys later.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.